Everyone. Today we'll be talking about random class. Random class is covered under the Learning Objective 12, Write and Trace code that uses random numbers. The capital R, random. Now, math class actually has a random method. It generates a random double greater than or equal to 0 and less than 1.0. So 0 is included and 1 is excluded. Here are some examples of what you can do with math.random. If you want to get a number between 0 and 9, you would do math.random times 10, which gives you a number between 0 and 9.9 something. And then when you take the int cast of it, it rounds it down and will make it an int between 0 and 9. You can, besides multiplying things, you can add to the range to change from 0 to 50 to being from 50 to 99. And in general, you can do math.random times b, take the int, and then add a to get a random int between a and b minus 1. Let's illustrate the random class by using a dice roller example. Let's assume that you're using Scanner to get a number of sides from the user for their die. And so maybe the user puts in 6, and so now you have a 6-sided die. And you want to output roll, which is a number between 1 and 6. Let's think about how we would do that with math.random. You can take a moment to pause the video and think about it, and then I'll go on. Good. So the first thing we have to remember is math.random gives me a number between 0 and 1. So that's not really going to work for us because we want a number between 1 and 6. So maybe the first thing we could do is, if we multiply by 6, then that will give me a number between 0 and 6 for sure. Now, if I make that into an int, I will get, let's think about it, the number is 0 because 0 is inclusive, but I'd never get 6 because I'm telling you that 1 is exclusive, which means the best you could do is like 5.9, and casting that to an int would only be able to give me 5. So really I have so far this answer giving me numbers between 0 and 5. Okay, well I wanted 1 and 6, so I'll just add 1 to the end. Right? So that's the basic thought process that I use to try and figure out how to get this dice roller to work. There might be other solutions. You might have considered rounding. The thing that gets tricky, of course, is making sure that you are within the numbers 1 and 6. So it should only print out anything between 1 and 6 and nothing outside of it. And good, I'll have it print out what that number is that you got. Great. Take a moment to think about this a little bit more. Work it out yourself. Try it with a different number of dice sides. So here I gave the example of 6 in the class, but dice sides could, of course, be any number that is an int. Instead of using the math class for the random numbers, you can use the random class, which has a lot more methods associated to it. So here I have a list of a couple of them. So there's the next int method, the next int with a max value in it, and the next double. So basically, a random object generates pseudo-random numbers, and you can get it in the java.util package. So you'll do an import directive at the top of your code that says import.java.util.random, similar to how you do Scanner. Let's look at an example of how the random class would work. You might say random rand is equal to new random, so that declares a new random object. And then you can declare an int random number, which is equal to rand.next int 10. Looking at the method names, it looks like the second one, next int with a max in it, which returns a random integer in the range from 0 to max, where 0 is included, but max is excluded. In other words, 0 to max minus 1 inclusive. In general, to get a random number from 1 to n, you would do int n is equal to rand.nextInt20 plus 1. So that's a pretty common way to get a random number. So for example, if you had a 20-sided die that you wanted to roll, you would do rand.nextInt20, which would give you a 0 through 19 number, and then you just add 1 to make it 1 through 20. You can get a number in an arbitrary range from min to max. You basically just need to do inside the next int the size of your range, and then you'll put in the min value. So here I have 7, so that's going to give me rand.nextInt7 will give me numbers from 0 to 6, and then I'll add 4 to it. So 0 plus 4 is 4, and 6 plus 4 is 10. So I'm going to get numbers between 4 and 10 inclusive. On this slide, I simply have the URL towards the random class for you to learn more about it, and I'll show you what that looks like. So just to show you, this is what the docs site looks like. So scrolling up, here's class random. It has some information about how random is used, and then down here it's going to have a list of all the various methods that we have for random. We're only talking about a few in class, but this will give you more information on what the parameters and output types are. Great, so let's do some practice problems together. As usual, you may pause the video. I will give time to do that for you to try and answer the questions on your own, and then I'll talk about the answer to the questions with you. Given the declaration random rand is equal to new random, how would you get a random number between 1 and 47 inclusive, and a random number between 23 and 30 inclusive? So let's pause for a moment and try to remember the syntax for getting ints from random, and then go from there. We may remember that with rand, we can do rand.nextInt n, and that will give me a number between 0 and n minus 1 inclusive. In this case, I want the numbers 1 and 47 inclusive, so that tells me I want the numbers between 0 and 46 inclusive, and then I'm just going to add 1 throughout. So that gives me int random1 is equal to rand.nextInt47 plus 1. Let's do something similar with a random number between 23 and 30 inclusive. So here, what is my range? I know 30 minus 23 is 7. So I probably want 0 to 7, and I'm just going to add 23 each time. That makes sense. This gives me 23, and this gives me 30. So that works out, and since I want to use rand.nextInt, I'm going to have to do rand.nextInt8 and then add 23 to it. So here's a similar question. Given the declaration random rand is equal to new random, how do you get a random even number between 4 and 12 inclusive? Where the difference here between previous examples is I want only even numbers. All right, so let's break this down a little bit. 4 and 12 is not so big. I can actually work this out by hand. I know I want to get 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. And because I know that rand.nextInt will always give me a number between 0 and whatever number I put in there, minus 1, I know I'm going to start at 0. So 0 is probably going to map to 4. Let's keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4. So probably, okay, rand.nextInt5 will be the correct thing to do here. And the thing that's kind of interesting here is I kind of have x and y sort of coordinates, so I can figure out how to get from 0 to 4 and 4 to 12 using a single equation. It's going to turn out that I am going to do plus times 2 plus 4. So 0 times 2 plus 4 that's going to give me 4. 1 times 2 plus 4, that's 2 plus 4, that's going to give me 6. So you can actually work this out, and you will see that the final answer that you get will be rand.nextInt 5, because I only want numbers from 0 through 4, times 2 plus 4. So let's end this lesson on random and test our understanding by writing a program that simulates rolling 2 6-sided dice and outputting the combined result. For example, you could have the output of 2 from your first die roll and 4 from the second one, and so your program would output 6. So take a moment, pause this video, try it out, write some pseudocode, and then let's see what the answer is. I will show you. So let's work through this problem, and let's think about it in terms of pseudocode. Well, I want to write an algorithm, and maybe I'll just call it dice. And I need to think about the input. Well, looking at my problem, I want to simulate rolling 2 6-sided dice, and I want to output the combined result. So the input is going to be basically die 1 and die 2, which are random. And then my output will be die 1 plus die 2. So let's think about the steps. Well, first I need to roll the dice, which I'll think about as rolling each die separately. Roll die 1 and roll die 2. And I probably want to save the answer. And then finally return what the sum of those two is. You can see I start to use a little bit of Java syntax here. It's not super important because this is pseudocode, but let's think about a little bit more what that syntax would look like. So probably I want these types of the die to be int. So I probably want int die 1 and int die 2. And I know that they're 6-sided, so I know that I probably want a number, well, I do want a number that's between 1 and 6 inclusive. And I know that I can use the random class to do that. So here, all I'm really doing is just taking some notes about other things that I know I need. And I can then put that into my algorithm to add some more detail. So I can say, okay, die 1 and die 2 are random ints, and with values 1 through 6. Okay, so now I'm just expanding what the algorithm is going to say. I think at this point we have enough information to work out what the code is going to look like. Okay, let's take a look at the code. You already know that Java programs must start with public class and then whatever you named it, which is, in this case, I called it dice, public static void main string args. And then since you need to use random, you need to import the random package. So that's going to be with import java.util.star. You could have also done import java.util.random. So either way works. It's just that the star will take everything that's inside java.util. It doesn't really matter right now. And then I'm going to create this new random value. Random rand is equal to new random. And then I'm going to roll the 2 dice. So I'm going to save a value called int sum, and I'm going to do int roll 1 is rand.nextInt 6 plus 1. And you can see that roll 1 and roll 2 have the same kind of code on them. because they're doing the same thing. They're both two six-sided dice. I'll sum those up and then I'll print out the sum. And really, another thing I want to point out is I have a little bit of comments here. So I put a Java doc at the top. We'll be summing two dice rolls, and I should really specify six-sided. And then also I've told here roll the two dice. I should really also add a comment that says here sum the two dice rolls together to be more explicit. So your answer might not look exactly the same, but you should get something that looks very similar to this. Yeah. I'm ending this set of exercises for you to do on your own. So write a method to return the int average of 3 ints. Return the double average of 3 ints. And then finally return the average of a given number of rolls of two six-sided dice. So here this might be a little bit tricky, so you can try to do 3 rolls of two six-sided dice to begin with. This will get you a little bit more experience with using the math class and basic operators and also the random class. Then just as a quick review, there is a keyword list in Java, so make sure that you know what the words that we have on this list are and take the time to review them and see where you're using them in your programs. That's all I'm going to leave you with for this particular video. Thank you for watching.